All right, Michael Yost from Strategies. Very nice to have you. We are very excited to have a conversation with a leadership coach at Strategies, given at the Gift Card Cafe, we've got about 5,000 or so spa clients. So I think they'll have a lot to learn from someone like Michael, and we're just hoping to provide some nuggets of insight from all his experience. So with that, Michael, do you want to give a quick background, how you got started, strategies, etc.? Feel free to kick off how you'd like.
Sure, sure. Well, thank you. Thanks for having me, first of all.
Hmm.
Love being a part of, any platform that gets great information out there and just sharing ideas
Hmm.
and information. So thanks so much for having myself and Strategies to be a part of this. So my name is Michael Yost. My official title is Vice President of Education here at Strategies. But prior to that, to let you know, and basically for those not familiar with Strategies, I'll put this out there. In the
Yep.
simplest terms, Strategies is a business education company that focuses on the beauty industry. So salons, spas, med spas, that's where we target our work. And that's our again, a primary customer client that we work with. On that end, myself, I am a hairdresser by trade. Was a hairdresser for 25 years, owned a business
Wow,
for
very cool.
16 of those years. And I got involved with Strategies because I was actually searching for education for my company. I was open about a year, maybe 2 years, somewhere in that ballpark. And here's what I knew at that point. All I knew was my sales were growing, but my checkbook was shrinking.
Yep.
And all I knew was that
Classic.
wasn't a good equation, right?
Yep. Yep.
That's not a good recipe for success.
Yep.
Came across Strategies and then started diving into the education. And to me, in the nutshell, it was so powerful that not only did it change my business, but I felt like what I heard and the model, the business model that we talk about and that we educate on was so powerful that I was like, you know what, I need to share this with the rest of our industry because it changed my life, and I've seen it
Yeah.
change a lot of people's lives. So that's it in a quick nutshell.
Very cool. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. So owned a salon,
Hmm.
16 years. And then so did you formally work with Strategies with like a
Yeah.
coach or?
So that was kind of interesting. So not long after I attended my first real educational class, and the flagship class and kind of the core class that anchors Strategies, it really talks about the team-based business model on a whole, is called Incubator. And so not long after I attended Incubator and I started putting things in practice in my company, about a year later, all of a sudden Strategies offered this ability to get involved as a coach for people that might be interested in working as a coach. And so I was all 100% in. Right as soon as that first communication hit, I was like, I'm in. Because again, like I had shared, it had changed and revolutionized my thinking to such a degree in my business that I'm like, again, people got to know this. And so I actually worked as a coach for probably then in the end about 12 years, coach slash educator for about 12 years. Um, there was a training process and things like that, but for about 12 years. And then, well, I still owned my company. So I would literally
Mhm.
kind of travel on the weekends. For anyone out there that's done any kind of education, you know how that routine goes.
Mhm.
Work in my business during the weekdays, travel on the weekends.
Yep.
And
Yep. Yep.
and so I got into that, but loved it. And then when it came time and I felt there was an opportunity and the timing just in personal life and all that was right, I sold my business and then became what I guess you would say is a full-time, um, member of Strategies. And from that point, then it just kind of kept moving forward. So, yeah.
Cool. Interesting. Oh, which direction shall I take this? we'll probably bounce around a little bit. I did have
Sure.
some a sequence of questions that I know I shared with you, but I think I'll skip ahead a little bit based on a few of the things you said. So yeah, so let's dive into kind of the nitty gritty. When you started, whether it was you working with strategies from the client side to now where you work with the clients, what are kind of the key things you're just, low hanging fruit you're seeing that, everyone needs to pay attention to? It's probably three or four, maybe it's one or 10 or things that you think would be kind of the key findings or pattern recognition you've seen that you'd want to share to kind of the industry at large.
Well, I think the best way to answer that in thinking about even for myself, and again, especially as we work with people, is every business out there, it doesn't matter. What I want to say is
Sure.
it doesn't matter your business model, your business structure,
Yep.
things of that nature. Every business out there has critical numbers that are associated with it. Simple as
Hmm.
that.
Yep.
And in the critical numbers that we especially focus on, and this is what started changing my business on my end, and what I've seen is I needed to start to learn what my critical numbers were, because I equate it this way. What the best definition, and this didn't hit me right at the beginning, but now over the course of all these years of educating and things, I finally have a great way to kind of explain it.
Hmm.
I like to explain it
Beautiful.
like this: your critical numbers, consider those numbers, and the critical numbers are productivity, um, new and existing client retention, retail in relation to total sales, and pre-book. So, and we can maybe dive into those more if you want to, or things like that, but I'll
Sure.
just leave those out there for right now. So those are your critical numbers. No matter what you do in your business, if you're in the beauty industry, those are definitely in your wheelhouse. You got to know those.
Yep.
And the reason I say that is because you got to consider the fact that you need to know, and here's the analogy I like to make: you kind of need to know your report card. I've
Yep.
got
Yep.
two sons now, that one that's my youngest is now graduating and going to be moving off to college now this year. My other is
Congrats.
older and is through that stage. But throughout their basically my
Yep.
life up until now, everything's been measured by their report card. And
Hmm.
what that tells me is if I see that my sons brought home A's on their report card, here's what I knew: that their actions and their behaviors were
Yep.
properly in alignment to produce that
Yep.
result. If they brought home F's, I
Yep.
knew that
Yep.
their
Yep.
actions and their behaviors, right, weren't
Yep.
lined up. And
Yep.
so I think the same exact thing for critical numbers is the first thing is you got to know your numbers. And if you don't know them off the top of your head, you need to, because that means you're not tuned in. And you need to know, are we getting an A or are we getting an F, or is it somewhere in between? Because that's a direct result of an action or a behavior that's
Yep.
producing that. And that to me is a foundational, just absolute first place to start, key for
Yep.
anyone out there.
Yep. Oh, what a classic. Like there's theory and practice, right?
Right.
And they're just like, the gap is like the key to everyone's success, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. So okay. So everyone knows what they should do. They need to watch their, the numbers you pointed out, four brilliant ones. Um, what if you could break it down as simple as possible, and no pun intended? What strategies would you suggest, or routines, or check-ins, or a software to use, or everything for someone to, as simple as possible, implement like let's use the simplest word, checklist of things that they could do to really to own those numbers, because it's hard, as you know, as the business owner trying to do everything and all that stuff. What would you suggest?
Well, I think that, if I were looking, like I said, I would take those critical numbers and I would create some type of a scoreboard. Simple as that. I create some type of a scoreboard, and a way to kind of keep myself accountable to that.
Hmm.
And so really, if if I were to give someone an advice that really hasn't dipped a toe in any of this, or maybe has some sense, I would create a scoreboard with those critical numbers. Again, I'll just repeat them again, just because to me
Beautiful. Yep.
they're worth repeating. Again,
Yeah, absolutely.
productivity, new and existing client retention, retail in relation to total sales, and pre-book. And so with that being said, I would create kind of a scoreboard for myself, set a goal for myself of where I'd like to be with those. But also then update that, or at least look at that on a weekly basis and say, all right, hey, listen, just find a time. Basically, we do this a lot in our coaching. We have a critical numbers dashboard, which is kind of where I'm kind of pulling this idea from, especially. And what we advise is everyone we work with basically go in and update weekly. So I say, hey, listen, if Monday mornings with your morning cup of coffee is a good time, go in, gather your information out of your point of sale software or wherever you might need to get this from. Traditionally, your whatever software you're using should be able to gather this information for you. And I'd update it on a weekly basis. Just find a time to stay consistent with
Yep.
it. And by doing so, that allows you to say, hey, listen, this past week, where were we? If we were striving to be 70% with pre-book, meaning appointments that had an appointment in the future before they left our business, what was our percentage last week? How many people left with an appointment in the future last week? And we'll look at my pre-book number. Let me look at, my productivity rate for, the past week. And I would do it weekly, develop a discipline to it, and start there. Simple as that.
Wonderful. And then you mentioned a dashboard. Is that a software you guys have
Well, that
created?
that actually is something that we use from a strategy standpoint. When we work with a client, when we work in a coaching relationship with a client, we have a tool, an online tool that we call the Command Center. And within Command Center, there are multiple tools within Command Center. You build cash flow plans and all kind of tracking pieces and scoreboards and all this good stuff. But within that, we do have a critical numbers dashboard that has those key areas I talked about. But also there's about 12 other numbers in addition to that we want updated on a weekly basis. Because what does that do? That simple as this, it keeps me in touch with the company. It keeps the company aware of where they are. And in a sense, I call it this. I say, you know what, this is kind of like going to the doctor and getting your vital signs, right? You got your chart in front of you. At a quick glance, I can read your chart. I can read your critical numbers dashboard, and I can see what's happening positively or negatively within the company. And then we can adjust as we need to.
Beautiful. Yeah. Gosh. Yeah. Yeah. The discipline to stay regularly, to check in regularly, and then taking that next step. It's like, I feel like coaching so important. I'm a huge proponent to coach it just personally. I've had coaches in the past. Yet there's something about it that it's tough to pull the trigger to bring the coach in, because it's obviously an investment, but it's such a great tool to
right.
I regularly tell people to me it's like the best transfer of knowledge I think I've ever encountered.
Right. And I think you actually hit on the exact right word, which is coaching is an investment. It's not a purchase, and the reason I say that is because, and I'm not just advocating our services only.
Sure.
I'm saying if you work with a coach in any capacity, what you're hoping to see is someone that helps you improve in that area, whatever it is. I mean, maybe you take coaching because you want to get better at golf.
Yeah.
And I know I need to have a golf coach if you ever saw my golf game. But what I hope is, I invest in that person that helps me improve in whatever area I'm doing. And so from a business standpoint, we hope then that when you invest in a coaching relationship, as I always say, listen, if I cannot help your company earn far beyond what our monthly fees are, 100%. I'm not good at my job. And the fact is, I'm not trying to toot my own horn or our horn as strategies, but we know we're good at the job.
Yep.
And so I think you use the right word because, again, the difference is I think a lot of people view it initially as a purchase. Listen, a purchase is I bought a
Yeah.
phone,
Yeah.
or
It's an
I bought a
expense.
new
Yeah.
couch.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
great. I need those things,
Yeah.
but it's not returning on my money spent. You
Yep.
know,
Yep.
so
And then is there like a profile in terms of size, revenue, kind of a success case that you'd say is like a dead on fit that like, if our clients are sitting out there considering this, um, like where kind of should they be, or at some point maybe they're too small or too big or whatever. Can you talk about kind of like success cases and kind of like if someone's sitting behind their computer watching this and they're like, okay, like they're considering their numbers and their revenue and they're considering investing in this, what would kind of, based on the kind of some of the anecdotes of success that you have, how should they be thinking about that? Did that make sense?
all right. So I'm going to answer it, and if I
Okay, yeah.
got it on that line of thinking that you had, then
Yeah.
awesome. But if not, then I might
Cool.
need to
Yeah.
reframe it,
Sure. Yep. Yep.
um, or need you to reframe it a little bit.
Yep.
So I'll answer it this way, and I'm going to answer it with a simple idea of no, there really isn't a here's what I could tell you. If, for example, if you are a $800,000 a year and above business, da da da, this
Sure.
is what you are going to, here's the success factor, right? We work with companies anywhere. And again, I'm just saying this, and maybe you're
Sure.
going to be
Yeah.
smaller or whatever. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter. But what I'm simply saying is, we work with companies that might produce 150 to $200,000 a year in sales to companies that I worked with a company that was at that point in time was about $8 million a year in sales, and everywhere in between, and
Hmm.
everywhere in between. Um, Now, I think that our average client that we work with, just to
Yep.
give
Yep.
you an idea, the
Perfect.
average
Yep.
client we work with probably ranges in yearly sales between 600 and about 1.1 million. Seems about
Got
the
it.
standard size of a company that seems to be about the average size company that's out there. Now, that being said, I put that out there just to kind of go, hey,
Sure.
here's a ballpark. But
Yep.
in
Yep.
any case, whether you're bigger or smaller, the key numbers are still the same, which are the fact that you don't, you don't, too many people, I guess what I want to say is, and maybe I'm taking this in a little
No, no, no,
different
please.
direction,
Yep. Yep.
but too many people, I think, chase a number thinking once
Hmm.
I hit, and I know this
Yeah,
happened
yeah,
to
yeah. Oh,
myself.
classic.
Because
Yep.
in
Yep.
my brain, I was like, man, once I hit
Yeah, yeah,
$1 million a year
yeah,
in
yeah,
sales,
yeah.
that's
I'll
going to
do
be
this.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we get
Yeah.
these targets in mind that actually don't mean honestly anything. Because
Hmm.
think about it this way, because again, another critical number, another key number we look at is what's fallen to our bottom line. Basically,
Yep. Yep.
what's our net profit? Because I would rather own a company that was $500,000 a year and profitable than
Hmm.
be a
Hmm.
company that was $1.5 million a year in
Hmm.
total sales, but lost money every month. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
and
Yeah.
so
Classic. Yeah.
there isn't, I think the way I understood the question is to say it this way. There certainly is not any line that says this is when you tip over
Right.
the edge. The fact is, if you I go back to the critical numbers piece, if you start to pay attention to the right things right away, does not matter your size or scale, success is available to you. I've seen extremely successful people that have businesses that are three, four, $500,000 a year in sales. I've also seen that same equation, extremely successful people that have 3 million plus a year in sales. And I've seen both sides also not be, or just frame it this way, not be successful.
Yep. 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 Yep.
So
Yep.
I don't know
Yeah.
if that
Yeah.
was I don't know
Yeah.
if I
No,
got your
perfect.
question or not, to
Spot
be
on.
honest with
Spot
you.
on. Yeah. No. Yeah. That definition of success, I think clarity around that is key.
Yes. Yeah, we
Um,
tend to judge success very by a total number. I'll put this one last nugget out there for you, and maybe it'll fall the right
mhm.
way. Uh, in the end, there's one number we should all pay attention to, and that's our net profit. Simple as
Yep.
that.
Yep.
If you want to judge success in your company, look at net profit. That to me is the ultimate decider. I have lots of companies that I work with that come in all kind of puffy chested and look how much we do in
Yep.
sales. And we look at the
Yep.
bottom line. I'm like, yeah, and you're not a profitable company. So
Yep. Yep.
it
Yep.
doesn't impress me that you have X, Y,
Sure.
and Z.
Yep.
I'm impressed by companies that are healthy and produce net profit. That's what our goal is to build
Hmm.
companies that do that, because that helps
And then,
everyone that's associated with it.
yep, yep. And then, is there anything you spend the most time working on with folks that, like, let's say the $3 million uh, business that's not optimally generating profits, that kind of bridge that gap? Kind of patterns that come to mind.
Yeah, actually.
Yeah,
This one's a hard one to
sure.
stomach. So I hope by now we've built. I hope on this, when you're listening, I hope at this point we develop enough trust, and you're like,
Yeah,
I kind of like this Michael guy, and I kind of
yeah, yeah,
trust him
yeah.
because I'm about to give you kind of something that's sometimes a little
Beautiful.
hard to swallow. But
Yeah.
the fact of the matter is, the common thread among success and not is simply leadership. It
Yeah,
comes down
yeah.
to leadership.
Perfect.
And
Yep,
that can
yep.
be a tough pill to swallow. I think some people, we want to hear retail, or we want to
Yeah,
hear this system or that system. Are those
yeah.
things important? Sure, they are. But where success happens is where leadership happens.
Mm.
And because leadership is what gets things across a finish line. And so, we can talk all day long, and I'm happy to. We can talk all day long about
Mhm.
systems or specific things like that.
Sure.
And,
Yep,
and
yep.
those are all necessary. Those are the
Yep, yep.
skeleton, the framework. But if it doesn't have leadership behind it, accountabilities that leadership gives, also the cheerleading that leadership gives, the
Yep.
sense of urgency in both
Mhm.
positive or sometimes, can be
Yeah, that's
negative
a tough one.
ways.
Yep, yep.
Right. If that leadership doesn't set the tone of the culture, let's just say it that way. If
Mhm.
leadership doesn't set the tone of the culture, it's really hard for businesses to achieve the level of success that they're capable of. Doesn't mean they won't achieve some success. I'm not
Yep,
saying
yep.
that. I'm
Totally.
just
Yep.
saying that if you really want that 100% output of what we could really be, it begins and ends with leadership. Simple as that.
Cool. And then how do you define leadership, of course?
Well, you know, okay, now you're getting tricky. Um, but leadership to me, honestly, I think in its simplest terms is leadership is the ability to, again, I think maybe I just said it, but if
Mhm.
I didn't, leadership's the ability to get things across a finish line.
Yep.
And it's the ability to keep people focused and inspired on the direction that you're going. And so that can mean, that leadership, I think so oftentimes when we think about leadership, we tend to think about, when I use the word, we'll go to the idea of accountability. Leadership holds accountability. But
Mhm.
I think a lot of times when we think accountability, our minds immediately shift to something that's a negative. Oh,
Right.
I got to talk to so and so about what they didn't do right, or I got to correct this behavior, or I got to address this negative issue. And the fact is, sometimes that is part of the job. Sure,
Yep.
that's part of the job. But what we ignore is the fact that leadership, and it's a whole lot more fun to be this kind of a leader, and you get better results, honestly, in the end.
Mhm.
Leadership is also about encouraging and congratulating and
Oh,
celebrating
yeah.
when
Big
things
time.
are happening that are the right behaviors. And sometimes we tend to ignore the things, because what we tend to do as leaders is sometimes, as leaders, we tend to get tired, right?
Yeah. Amen.
And so
Yep.
we tend to get a little bit run down, and we tend to ignore the things that are small but are powerful. And so never lose the ability to celebrate even the smallest success,
Yep.
because when your team sees that happen, we're all
Appreciation.
simple
Yep.
people. I'm just a
Yep. Yep.
good, in the end, aren't we all like
Yeah.
Pavlov's dogs, right?
Yep.
In the sense that
Exactly.
we are learned, when I get praise, what do? I want to keep doing that. And I
Yep.
am no different. And now I know you're like, are you calling
Yep.
me a dog? Listen, I'm a dog. All right.
Yep. Yep.
Meaning that when I go get my wife a Starbucks coffee without being
Yep.
asked, and she tells
Yep.
me,
Yep.
man, Michael, I love you so much. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Oh,
And I get
yeah.
rewarded. What do I want to keep doing? Keep going buy
Yep.
that coffee
Yep.
without being
Yep.
asked.
Yep. Yep.
We got to remember that leadership and positive leadership gains better results. And that's part of the job too. And it's a whole lot more fun to play that game than it is. Let's find all the things we didn't do right. Sometimes that's
Totally.
part of it, but accountability
Totally.
to the positive is also equally important.
Totally. Yeah. No. And so, you know, in terms of reconciling with giving, the improvement feedback, let's call it the negative constructive feedback.
Mhm.
Um, and that's a very nuanced, that's a very, difficult. Conversations are always hard, and every business, I feel like this is one of the hardest things. What's the bottom line in terms of creating a culture of constructive feedback? Because let's face it, a culture of always improving, all that you want to always be improving, and when there's so many moving parts to everything, and the leader's job is to, at some point someone's just watching everything, and seeing, how can everything improve, and they're responsible for quickly giving feedback, and they're always getting things thrown at them. How would you talk about giving, improvement based, constructive, negative, or whatever you want to call
Yeah.
it, feedback?
No, that's awesome. I mean, that's a great question. And I love it because here's some advice I would give. So for those out there, I'll go back to my story just for a second. And we see this happen a lot, or this is quite common because a lot of people are out there probably going, well, it'd be easy for me to lead if I weren't always in my
Hmm.
treatment room or wherever you provide your services, right? Because many leaders and owners out there, and I'm not, and I use those words independently because you can be a leader in your company and not be the quote owner of a company. All right. So when we say leader, I mean anyone that has the ability. We can all be leaders
Yeah.
realistically, but it doesn't mean you're the owner. But that being said, many leaders in companies, whether they're the owner or not, are also service providers in their company.
Hmm.
And so, like Michael, that would be great if I had the time, to do that. And so I can understand completely. So what I want to say is to answer the question is this is something that we often say. I'll just frame it up as do your very best to coach in the moment. And what I mean
Yep. Yep.
is
Yep.
when you recognize or you see something, don't allow that to go long. And that when I say coach in the moment, I'm going to tell you that everyone out there has a 24-hour window of time to address
Mhm.
something. And I still consider that to
Yeah,
be
that's
coaching
a
in
good
the
one.
moment.
Yep. Yep.
Because oftentimes, if you see it right when it happens, I like to address it as quickly as I can. But sometimes, in my case, and again, I wasn't in a treatment room, but I was standing behind a chair, sometimes 10 hours a day. I wouldn't walk away from a client or someone I was servicing to go address an issue. That's just
Right.
bad form
Business. Yep. Yep.
on a lot of levels.
Yep.
But as long as you address it within a 24-hour window, meaning if at the end of the day, hey, listen, just make a name up. Hey, listen, Jane, do you mind if I just talk to you really quick before you leave for the end of the night? I just got just a real quick thing I want to just address with you. And I address whatever that issue was. Or maybe you can't catch them at night, but what you probably can do is maybe before they start their workday the next day. Hey, listen, Jane, I didn't have a chance to talk to you yesterday. Our schedules just didn't sync up, but I want to just quickly address a quick issue I noticed yesterday morning with,
Mhm.
and then
Yeah.
insert issue
Insert.
there.
Yep.
When you do those things in the moment, it never is a big conversation. It's always a
Right.
very
Right.
small, simple conversation. And
Beautiful.
so to
Yep. Yep.
me, the key is this. The foundation first is as long as you have clear expectations, policies, procedures mapped out, it's very easy to coach in the moment because now you're just coaching on something that everyone's already aware of. Where we
Mhm.
start to tend to have trouble is when we don't give clarity on whether it's through a handbook or a training guide or something. Where we don't have clear expectations, that's when conversations get more difficult, because
Yep.
now we're left to interpretation. And I
Yep.
don't
Yep.
mean that
Yep.
we've got to have a list of rules and
Sure.
regulations. We're not saying that. But what we are saying is clear expectations around how we would expect uh, a situation, how we expect a consultation to be done, how we expect a service to be provided, what we expect from the customer experience, those types of things. We need to map out the expectations so that everyone has awareness. If we do that well, then coaching in the moment gets a whole lot easier as well. It's when we run into issues or we allow those moments to go unaddressed is when we
Address.
run
Yeah.
into problems, right? Because,
Wonderful.
last thought on that is every forest fire that ever raged in your company all started
Yeah.
with a spark. If we
Yep.
address
Yep.
that little spark right then, it doesn't turn into a forest fire, right?
Yep. Wonderful. Yep. Beautiful. Yeah. No, timing and addressing it's
Yep.
key. Um, let's shift to COVID-19. Oh man.
Aha.
So, you know, our industry especially has obviously, like, many industries, has been impacted a crazy amount to some extent the
Hmm.
last year. How have you seen, or what would you say is kind of your general just impact or view of the spa market, um, and impact, like, I guess, um, kind of macro impacts COVID-19 has had on clients, and how they've adjusted and adapted, and what it's going to look like in the future for the business, in terms of adjustment, cost adjustment, protocol, etc. How would you think about that?
Well, I mean, there's no doubt, especially in the spa industry, that
Yeah,
COVID-19, I mean,
yeah,
was a real shaker, right? I mean,
big time.
obviously,
Yeah.
I mean, every business was impacted, but the spa, I think, especially at another level on top of,
Hmm.
because some businesses within the beauty industry were able to kind of get back to work, but the spa, especially when you have such close contact,
Yep.
direct contact, and it was a lot of like, all right, stay, hey, listen, you can do your service, but we got to keep a mask on. Well, it's really hard to do
Yeah.
spa services when you're wearing, when the customer has to wear a
Yeah.
mask.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So there was a huge amount of impact from that. What has come out of that, I think, is this. I think there's been a lot of, I think what will in the end be a lot of good, and we were kind of talking about this before we kind of kicked off, just the idea of, I think there's been a lot of good innovation that's started to come
Hmm.
about that will benefit our industry and the spa industry as we move forward in the future. Because we found creative ways, or we found things that we needed to do, innovation basically, that we needed to put in place to be able to be and just at this point, this past year, just keep our businesses open and
Yeah.
going. And that's
Hmm.
going to come back now as things get a little bit easier, and a little, knock on wood, let's just hope that things continue
Hmm.
the way that we, at least right now, is
Hmm.
at the time that I'm speaking, things are trending more in a positive way. The
Yep.
vaccinations are getting out there. Things,
Vaccines. Yep.
restrictions are keep reducing more and more. And that's, I love that for our industry and for every industry. Um, but I'm hoping now that we're seeing the sense that there's this return to how that innovation can come back now to really catapult us, forward as an industry even more so. I think I have to say, I think there's been a lot of good innovation when it came to the idea of how we approach our protocols, with just working in a more a safe related kind of environment.
Yeah.
I think that's a real positive, because I think
Yep.
honestly, I think a lot of the reasons many businesses within the spa industry kind of suffered is because I think there was becoming a bit of, for a lot of companies out there, a bit of laxness around when a customer came in and experienced you,
Yeah.
how they might have felt around the cleanliness issue or things like
Yeah.
that, that now I think
Oh
we've,
yeah.
I think we've
Yeah.
pretty much
Oh
wiped
yeah.
out, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No,
I think
absolutely.
that's going to come back. I think that sounds so like small, but I think it's so big
No,
at the same time.
it's a keystone
Yeah,
habit, so to speak.
absolutely. And so I think with the future, though, I think what the future is, what I've started to notice in general businesses we work with, and and especially in spa, is at least what I've noticed with the future is there is becoming a return to the services. I have to admit, I was a little bit, just uncertain with like how much would start to
Yeah.
return. But I'm noticing with companies I work with all over the United States that everyone
Hmm.
reporting a general uptick over this last,
Yep.
especially 6 to 8
Us too.
weeks, an
Hmm.
uptick of positivity in terms of
Yep.
faces coming back in, receiving
Hmm.
services, things like that. So I'm happy to see that happening,
Yep.
for the industry especially.
Yep.
Oh,
And for what it's worth, gift certificate volume in the
oh,
industry is also back to
right,
it's back to even better than
right.
parts of last year. So that's very
Yeah,
good.
yeah, and I'm glad you
Um,
brought that up. That's a great point.
yeah. 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 Um, where what was I gonna say? Yeah, and then any like giant kind of success cases where like a spa kind of innovated 10x and actually thrived somehow. They created a new product. They got into a new digital um, business of some sort, or they innovated with touchless software somehow, or anything ring out there. It might not be too applicable to this to
Um,
it, but I thought I'd check.
I'm
Um,
trying to think about anything that, I'm thinking about again. I want to give some, examples I have directly seen. And, I think what I would say is, I think the areas that I have seen spas especially have the most success is they got a lot. What's interesting is this is I can't say that I think there's anything just absolutely, like, I can't share a piece of like absolutely
sure.
innovative, like mind
Yep.
bending,
Yep.
like here it is.
Yep.
But I have seen little adjustments make
Yeah.
huge impacts. And
Yep.
what I want to say is I'll just kind of frame it up this way. Don't The companies that spas, especially that I work with, that have had great success, have found a way to capitalize on what I would call the low hanging fruit, meaning the things that they already do that no one else is aware of the fact that they do that service. So again, this isn't anything mind blowing,
Sure.
but what
Yep.
I
Yep.
would, maybe the piece of advice I'd give out there to everyone is to say this is, never ignore the fact that you do more than whatever that one service is that you are providing to Mrs. Jones in that moment, right? They
Beautiful.
may be in for that specific service, but you have a list of other services that they could take advantage of that they probably aren't aware of. And I think, honestly, what's happened in this time, I think what has happened over this COVID time is the fact that businesses, the ones that have had great success, have found ways to really make sure they make their customer aware of the other things that they do that they can
Yep.
take advantage of. Because we were all looking to find ways to grow sales. And so just that awareness piece, I think I've seen, Alexa, the companies that have done that have found great ways to make that come to life. I actually did have actually there's a company that I work with now that you're bringing up. There actually is something that was kind of cool. I had a company I worked with created their own QR code. Um,
Hmm.
and so every service provider had this QR code. And when you scanned the QR code, what it did was it gave them information on other services and gave them an outline of how those would benefit them. And so that
Yep.
actually was a really cool piece of innovation that was really quite simple, but
Yeah.
very
Absolutely.
powerful,
Yeah.
because what does everyone carry around? Everyone carries around their phone.
Yep.
And it's a
Yep.
great way, instead of having to, here's what's cool about it. Instead of having to always depend on the service provider to tell everyone about
Yep.
all the other
Yep.
stuff, it was like they created a great script that just said, hey, listen, we got a range of services. hey, listen, scan this QR code and be aware of these other things. And when it did it, obviously now it lived on their phone. They could view it in
Yep.
that moment, or they could
Yep.
view it while they were waiting for their service, or they could view it
Yep.
in the comfort of their home after the service, but it was always with them then. And I thought that
Yep.
was a
Yep.
really cool piece. Actually, that was a really cool piece of innovation
Very cool.
that a company did, just using what they offer and just build a QR code to link everyone to it.
Love it.
Pretty
Yeah, yeah,
straightforward.
yeah. No, yeah. Oh, innovation usually it's simplicity. It's
Yep.
actually the removal of the fat, and like it's
Yes.
yeah,
That's an
yeah,
awesome
that's
way to
exactly
describe
right.
it. I love that.
Yeah, yeah. Um cool. All right. So kind of getting toward the end here, any resources, books, um, things you'd like to point folks to as kind of a starting point for, or just whatever book recommendations that you found have impacted people or yourself, that you like sharing.
All right. I'm going to give you a couple. And unfortunately, I'm like coming up with, like I said, the authors are going to escape me. But a
That's fine.
great one is, and it's been around for a little bit. All right. It's been around for a while, but it's still a great resource, especially around the communication and coach in the moment. And the leadership piece is called Question Behind the Question. All right. So if you
Beautiful.
just
Question
Google
behind the
question behind the
question.
question,
Okay.
book, you'll find it. All right. It's out there. And I
Okay.
think maybe I think the author's last name might be Brown, but I might be mistaken on that. But Question Behind the Question is a tremendous book resource, because what it speaks to is this, um, it speaks to the idea of that when someone first comes to you, there's always that question they need to ask to really get to the heart
Yep.
of what they're really saying. It's never that first
Right.
thing that manifests itself. It's always the question you ask after the question that gets you to where you want to
Love it.
go, and the information that you
Love it.
need, on that end. So Question Behind the Question is a fantastic one for a lot of leaders out there. Um, also, it's don't split the difference, or
Oh,
never
the
split the difference.
negotiating, the FBI
Yes,
negotiator.
yes, you got it.
Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah,
That is a
yeah.
tremendous book for
Oh,
leaders
interesting.
out there.
I was wondering about that one. Interesting. Yeah, it's like kind
Yes.
of on my list, but okay. Cool. I'll move it up my list. That's great.
Yes, absolutely.
Um,
Do that.
cool.
That's a great one, because again, I think the last thing I want to just kind of put out there is
Beautiful.
the
Yep.
idea of this is, and is, you know, one of the things that's kind of been a theme throughout this, and what I like about these books and things like that is, great
Mm-hmm.
leadership in the end looks like someone that's fearless. Simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the more resources that you can do that help you to become more fearless, because fearless is what leads people and inspires people,
Yep.
is the fact
Yep.
that I got a
Yep.
vision and here's where we're going. And
Yep.
I may be crazy as all crazy.
Yep.
But
Yep.
the
Yep.
fact of the
Yep.
matter is, if I'm fearless about it, meaning I got a passion around it and this is where I
Yep.
want to
Yep.
go with it, you know what? You
Mm-hmm.
can make a whole lot of mistakes, and you will, because we
Yep.
all do. But
Of
that's
course.
what's
Yep.
going to get you to that end goal that you want, because you just are like, listen, fearless is like, listen, I don't mind getting knocked down because I still know
Yep.
where I want to go when I get back up.
Yep.
And so
Absolutely.
fearless is the one trait. So that's why I think there's a lot of that, like I said, don't split the difference and things like that, is it keeps people on track with, again, just being like, listen, this is where I want to go. And
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
not going to, so it's a great way to get, so it's another great resource, for you as far as that goes, when it comes to like
Beautiful.
some resources to read and to look into. So there's a couple books to start with, at least.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Having a vision, especially if that vision's like bigger than yourself kind of thing. That's
Right.
that's how you really inspire
Right.
people.
Oh,
Um,
one more thing. Sorry,
yeah,
because now
please go
stuff's
ahead. Go
popping in
ahead.
my head, man.
Good, good, good. Yeah.
Another good one. If you don't watch Simon Sinek and follow anything that he
Yeah.
does through
Yeah.
YouTube or any of his books, read anything by Simon Sinek and watch
Yep. Yep.
anything on that Simon Sinek
Yep.
does. Just a big fan there too. Because
Yep. Yep.
again,
Yep.
it's
Yep.
not about, he talks a lot about it's, you got to establish the why for people.
Yep. Yep.
So
Yep.
again, if you're a leader
Yep.
out there and you want to get people to go somewhere different, you got to tell them why we're going there. And
Yep,
because people
100%.
don't follow, like, we
Yeah,
all need to know the whys. So there's one more for you.
100%. Beautiful. Yeah, no, that's great. I think his I think the easiest way to start there would be he's got a TEDx talk actually
Yes. Yep.
that went crazy viral that put
It
him on the
did go
map. I
crazy
think it was
viral.
like almost 7, 8 years ago. But yeah, it's
Yep.
just called Start with Why.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a brilliant one. That's a brilliant one. Cool. Where can people find you?
All right. Well, the easiest place to find us is just at strategies.com. Simple as that.
Okay.
Check our website out. From there, we've got all kind of resources. If you want to know more about, again, who we
Beautiful. Yeah.
are,
Mhm.
strategies.com is a place to start. You can actually download for free what we call our white paper, which is just all about our
Perfect.
team-based business model on a whole. Gives you all the facts there. You can see classes that we offer. We offer lots of things that are of no cost to you. You could take advantage of. We also
Perfect.
offer classes. Obviously, everything we're doing right now is online via Zoom,
Hmm.
and we hope to get soon back in person as well. As far as that goes, and we also offer the fact, and you can reference it all there. If you want to talk to someone one-on-one just about your
Hmm.
company, we offer a free coaching call, 60 minutes. There's no
Wonderful.
commitment. We're not going to give you any kind of
Yeah,
hard
yeah, yeah.
sell kind of mumbo jumbo. We just want to hear about how we can help your company and maybe try and give you a little bit of a place to start. So if you want 60 minutes to just working with a coach for free, we got that available to you as well. And then obviously beyond
Wonderful.
that, you can learn about our coaching and things if that's something you're interested in. So strategies.com, best place to start with us.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, Michael, thanks for joining us. We'll do show notes and nuggets for everybody, and we'll post this everywhere and include it in
Awesome.
our email. And yeah, thanks again for coming on. Hope you had a good time.
Man, my pleasure. Anytime. I loved it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, brother.
All
Talk
right.
soon.
Thank you.